All right. It's time to talk about Mualani. I have my supervisor with me today. We need to be careful not to say anything that offends him. Otherwise, he will nerf us into oblivion, and we will not be allowed to have good characters anymore. Yeah, you. This is your fault. All right, we're talking about Mualani. What is Mualani? Mualani is Genshin's first purely vaporized focused Hydro DPS character. She fits into this identity because of the infrequency of her hits. Mualani is doing 4 or 5 hits every rotation. Mualani does not hit a lot, but she does hit very hard. She used to hit a lot harder. We'll get to it. Thanks to this asshole. The other thing that we need to know about Mualani is she has AoE insurance mechanics. Mualani also does additional damage in AoE, despite her damage being reduced for each enemy she hits. We'll get to it. So what do I mean by vape? Vape is the reaction that occurs between Hydro and Pyro. When a Hydro and a Pyro love each other very much, they do double the damage. That is also additionally multiplied by your EM modifier. Mualani's core mechanic is called Sharky Bite. So when Mualani enters her E skill, she hops on her surfboard, she starts cruising along. As she cruises along, she gains stacks of this mechanic called Wave Momentum. Wave Momentum starts at 0 and goes up to 3. It is gained as Mualani is in contact with enemies. So Mualani's gameplay, if this is an enemy, this is Mualani, she does this. She hugs the enemy. As she hugs the enemy, she generates Wave Momentum, which makes Sharky's Bite do additional damage. Sharky's Bite is her special normal attack that is active in her elemental skill. So you're gonna charge her Wave Momentum stacks and snap, Sharky Bite. Wave Momentum can be generated every 0.7 seconds that Mualani is in contact with an enemy hitbox. Worth noting, this should be delayed by ping, so it won't be exactly 0.7 seconds, and some combos may be more difficult to do at higher ping values because of this, but right now that's an unknown. That's just an assumption on behalf. When Wave Momentum is fully stacked, Sharky's Bite will do the damage of the base value, plus 3 times the momentum bonus, plus a bonus fully charged Sharky's Bite modifier. This is called Sharky's Surging Bite. Additionally, each enemy that Mualani generates Wave Momentum from is marked as prey. Da-da, da-da, da-da. What is marked as prey? Marked as prey is Mualani's AoE insurance mechanic. Any enemy she touched to generate Wave Momentum will be hit by a Sharky missile if they were not hit by Sharky's Surging Bite. Sharky missiles do the entire damage of Sharky's Surging Bite. The more enemies Sharky's Bite and Sharky missiles hit decreases Mualani's damage by 14% for each additional enemy hit, up to 28%. But the additional catch is Mualani's Wave Momentum generation is tied to, or the timer is per enemy. So when there are grouped enemies, Mualani is spamming fully charged Sharky Surging Bites. Mualani's ideal base combo is to do a Sharky Bite immediately after using her E skill and then doing 3 fully charged Sharky Surging Bites. In grouped AoE scenarios, Mualani can do 4 or more fully charged Sharky Surging Bites, which counters her damage reduction passive. It also means that because of the Sharky missile mechanic, Mualani has absolute AoE on any enemy she touches. This is a mechanic that essentially no other Genshin Impact character besides Nahida has ever had, where once Nahida has marked an enemy, they're getting hit by Nahida. There's nothing they can do about them. So you could argue that Mualani is actually an AoE god and not a single target god anymore. Why do I say anymore? Let's talk about Night Soul Burst first, then I'll get to it. Night Soul Burst is the new Natlan character mechanic that causes additional effects in character kits and artifact sets. Night Soul Burst can be triggered at different intervals by any elemental damage. The cooldown of this depends on the amount of Natlan characters in the party or Night Soul enabled characters in the party, if they ever give Night Soul to other characters. When there is 1 Natlan character, the cooldown is 18 seconds. When there are 2, it is 12. When there are 3, it is 9. Each time Night Soul Burst is triggered, Mualani's next elemental burst has its damage increased by a base of 20% HP for 1, 30% for 2, and 40% for 3. You'd expect there to be a bonus for getting 3, but there isn't. Don't ask me why. You're getting the most out of this if you're using Mualani's Burst every E skill, but also it doesn't really matter. It is additional damage, but it's stuck to the 18-second cooldown for now. In the future, it will be lower. So that's awesome. Mualani's talent priority is E skill, then burst. Her normal attack talent does not affect Sharky Bites. Sharky Bites are normal attack damage that scale with her elemental skill talent. Now, I talked about Mualani used to be a single target god. Mualani, for the first week of beta, was the highest single target damage DPS in the game. Over the course of beta, Mualani has been nerfed by, technically the range depends on your combo assumptions, but the gist is 30 to 40%. I'm not happy about it, and we're gonna talk about the state Mualani used to be in a bit here because I'm that salty. But yes, Mualani used to be one of the best DPS characters in the game. Now she is likely one of the weaker ones. Weapons. The Dub Engine, Surfing Time. Surfing Time gives 20 HP percent, 88.4 crit damage, and 48 normal attack bonus. This is Mualani's best in slot 5-star weapon. This basically gives as many stats as a 5-star weapon possibly can. It is really cool that it's a Dub Engine. Hey, yo, we're doing Zenless content. Go watch it, please. I made a GUN guide. You need to watch the Zenless content for me to be able to make more. Go do it. It's good, I swear. Share it with your friends. Anyway, the technical best in slot 4-star weapons for Mualani, there are actually 4 of them that we need to talk about. Sacrificial Jade, Tome of the Eternal Flow, the Widsith, and the Ring of Yansh. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is Tome of the Eternal Flow. Tome of the Eternal Flow gives charge attack damage bonus. It does not have a passive on Mualani, but it's a very good 4-star weapon just because it gives 16 HP percent and 88.4 crit damage. That's honestly all it needed to do. Good weapon. The next weapon we're gonna talk about is the Sacrificial Jade. The Sacrificial Jade is a crit rate weapon. Mualani's set gives her 40 crit rate. Mualani is also a crit rate ascension. If you use Sacrificial Jade on Mualani, she will have a minimum 101% crit rate with 0 crit rate substats. That being said, if you know to look for EM HP substats on your artifacts, Sacrificial Jade can be Mualani's best in slot 4-star weapon, especially if you have Refines on it. At R5, this is better than any other weapon you could be using on Mualani, even counting how difficult it is to have stats. The opposite is the Widsith, or the Will Smith, the slot machine, whatever name you prefer. This is a crit damage weapon. It has a 1 out of 3 every 30 seconds passive. Mualani can use 2 of the buffs. I usually only really recommend or super recommend this weapon for characters who get 3 out of 3 buffs. But hey, yo, you like fishing? If you fish for the perfect buff, this is like Mualani's best in slot weapon, period. Especially if you crit fish on top of that, you can just snap. Widsith can have incredibly high highs and in pretty mediocre lows. At worst, Widsith is worse than the Craftable and worse than R1 Sacrificial Jade, but I don't think that really matters. The highs are high enough where I'm comfortable recommending it. There is a new Craftable. The new Craftable at R5 is essentially as good as the R1 Sacrificial Jade. It's actually a very good weapon. The only reason I'm mentioning it at the end is because it's a new Craftable, meaning it uses new billets. This weapon will not be readily available at the start of version 5.0. But yeah, this weapon is great. It's craftable. It is a HP main stat. It gives up to 38 normal attack bonus. Since you're going to be building HP on Mualani, you're going to be maxing that in most cases. If you have the resources, Ring of Yansh, very good weapon. It is one of, if not Mualani's best 4-star weapon options. I just worry about the obtainability. Artifacts. You may not have heard, new artifacts are built different. This set actually also got nerfed, by the way. It used to give 20 damage percent. Now, this set gives a paltry 15 generic damage percent for Night Soul damage, and a paltry, peasantly 40% crit rate, with the conditional of your character needs to consume Night Soul. Mualani always consumes Night Soul, so it's free. 15 damage percent, 40% crit rate. Hey yo, you remember Merciless Hunter? Who remembers a year ago when 15 damage percent and 36 crit rate were a big deal? Yeah, me too. Another garbage. New set, it's great. You have to farm it for Mualani, farm it for Connect, farm it for future Nightly characters. It's paired with a support set called Scroll of the Embered City's Hero. That set gives 40 damage bonus for being a Natlan character and triggering a reaction? Holy artifacts are built different in Natlan. The characters were too, and then they weren't anymore. But yeah, Obsidian Codex is a very good set. Now the runner-up is Mircea Hunter. This is worse Obsidian Codex, and you have to play with Furina, but it's similar. People have farmed it. It's entering the strongbox. As long as you're willing to play some more inconsistent teams with Furina, you'll be set to go on release with Mircea Hunter. The next best set option is technically Heart of Depth. Heart of Depth is a victim of power creep in sets. It gives 45 damage percent. That's it. It doesn't give 50 damage percent and 18 attack or something. It just gives 45 damage percent. Why would you use Heart of Depth instead of the new set? You're correct. The new support set is better. You're correct. The new set is better for DPS characters. 40 damage percent is not 45, but you have a very good point. Main stats. For your sands, you're going to use HP or EM. For your goblet, you're going to use Hydro, HP or EM. For your circlet, you're going to use crit damage or HP or EM. Constellations. C1. This gives plus 60% HP damage for Mualani's first Sharky Surging Bite and the wave of Sharky missiles summoned by the Sharky Bite. It has to be the first Surging Bite, not just the first Sharky Bite, but whatever. This gives 60% additional HP damage. It used to give 75. They nerfed Mualani's C1, but it also has an additional passive that it's always had, where Mualani is able to surf for 30% longer. Kind of groovy. Being able to surf for 30% longer, you could argue is compelling enough to recommend pulling it just for Overworld, because you can use Mualani as a taxi throughout Natlan. They also nerfed her Overworld mobility. Mualani used to be able to move faster by bunny hopping. They took that away from her too. I don't know what they're doing, man. C2. C2 gives Mualani additional uptime. She gets Night Soul points refunded after collecting floaters. She has a mechanic called Floater. We can actually ignore it generally. When she does a Sharky Surging Bite, the duration of her E-skill extends. You're always going to be doing maxed out Sharky Surging Bites, so it doesn't matter. This changes Mualani's ideal rotation from the partial and then 3 full to 4 full Sharky Surging Bites. Pretty nice. C3, plus 3 E-skill. Plus 3 E-skill is plus 3 to Sharky Bite. Real good. C4 gives 75 burst damage percent and 15 energy. It used to give 200% burst damage bonus and 7 energy. Yeah, they nerfed this too. C5 is plus 3 burst. C6 applies the C1 bonus to every attack that Mualani does, or every Sharky Surging Bite that Mualani does. C1 again used to be 75, and her C6 also used to give 5% crit rate and 10% crit damage. They nerfed that too. I don't get it. I don't get it. Is this a standard banner character or something? What are they doing? Teams. The team that I'm probably most comfortable recommending is Mualani, Xiangling, Furina, Baizhu. That being said, burning isn't great. The primary thing that burning does is it's non-intrusive, and Baizhu just happens to be a Dendro healer. Burning itself does not really apply Pyro at all for Hydro DPS characters. What it does is it doesn't weaken any Pyro aura and it doesn't cause any inconsistency. There is inconsistency introduced into this team by having Furina here. This will be most consistent against larger hitbox enemies where Xiangling is applying additional Pyro, but again, there can be problems. This is primarily very good if you have constellations on Furina or something like a Kia Khajin suit, and I am most comfortable recommending it because it has a decentralized damage profile and it will be good in AoE because Pyronado applies Pyro to multiple enemies. Same thing for Xiangling in general. You're going to see Xiangling as a general trend in these teams. Xiangling is a problem more than she is an asset. Xiangling is the only consistent way to apply Pyro in AoE, but Xiangling has, frankly, impossible energy requirements for most players. There are a lot of ways to work around it, but it's frustrating that we have to work around it, kind of stressing a character who arguably needs the help more than she wants to be stressed. Let's talk about the next team that gets bricked by Xiangling. You can use Zhongli, Emily, Xiangling. Again, burning isn't non-intrusive reaction. Emily is an off-field DPS character who just does a bunch of damage. It's really consistent damage into Mulan teams, just so you're less dependent on Mulan's own damage. If you wanted to scam out some damage with Zhongli, you can use Archaic Petra. Additionally, anywhere you use Zhongli, you can technically use Katsina with Scroll of the Ember City's hero. I'm not really a fan of that recommendation, but you can do it. The next team that's bricked by Xiangling is also bricked by some difficulty with VV setups. Since Mulan is a Catalyst character, she can just use a normal attack to apply Hydro to set up for VV, or again, Archaic Petra. Kazuha, if you use his Elemental Burst, he wants to Pyro Absorb, and this can also help offset Xiangling ERX because you can alternate using Pyronado with Kazuha's Burst interchangeably every other rotation. Doing something with VV is always an option to get additional personal damage out of Mulan, which a lot of people may find very appealing. You'll get very big numbers. A fun kind of niche support that you can use is Candace. Candace is a Hydra character. Hydra Resonance is HP. Mulan is a HP scaling character, but Candace also gives normal attack damage bonus. The stat that Mulan has the least of is damage percent. She also doesn't have a lot of HP, especially when teams don't have Hydra Resonance. So Candace is actually a really good buffer for Mulan. Similarly, Mona is another viable buffer. There are options. Pretty fun stuff, honestly. If you really, really refuse to use Xiangling, you can use Toma or Dia. Both of them have a lot of issues, primarily that they're not good at applying Pyro in AoE situations. But they are defensive characters, and you can use their kits defensively to help essentially survive. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Mulan's team options right now. I feel like the teams that I would like to recommend the most are primarily gated by inconsistency or not having a healer with Farina. So these things get offset by having Farina cons as early as C1, but they are still just hard to recommend. Mulan has some pretty significant team building issues and team gameplay issues, primarily from Xiangling. Xiangling is a problem. Xiangling is a problem character. We need a Xiangling alternative ASAP. Please, Malika, please. Please, Malika. So yeah, Mulan's teams are okay. They're bricked by Xiangling, and they kind of don't do as much damage as I would like them to do right now. We'll see how that shakes out when she releases. Mulan is a character who, despite being nerfed, still has very strong whale prospects. I'll be doing showcases with my own Mulan on release, but that's not exactly what I'm worried about. I'm more worried about the player who hasn't been playing for 2 years, or even 1 year. That's why I consider Mulan potentially quite bad now, and it's a bit of a shame, because I was very excited for this character initially.